Indonesia is predicted to be the fourth largest economy in the world by 2045. This would mean it would overtake major developed economies like Germany and England, making Indonesia one of the fastest growing economies of the world today. Despite this, Indonesia is not in the spotlight of economists today. However, it should be. Many also know Indonesia mainly for their famous vacation destinations with beautiful beaches like Bali. But Indonesia is much larger than that, and so is its economy. It is Southeast Asia's largest economy in fact. With such a size and fast growth, Indonesia is facing major problems that it even has to move its entire capital city to another island. How is Indonesia growing so fast, and at what cost? To understand Indonesia a little bit better, a quick background has to be given. Indonesia is a country of 17,000 to 18,000 islands stretching along the equator in Southeast Asia, and is today an independent country. But it was not always like that. In 1800, the government of the Netherlands established the Dutch East Indies under their government control. The Japanese invasion and subsequent occupation in 1942 until 1945 during World War II ended Dutch rule and encouraged the previously suppressed Indonesian independence movement. 2 days after the surrender of Japan in August 1945, nationalist leader Sukarno declared independence and became president. Since then, Indonesia has remained an independent nation. In 1997, Indonesia was hit very hard by the Asian financial crisis, but since then has picked up economic growth again, like almost no other nation has seen. What are the pillars of Indonesia's economy today, and what is driving their growth? The country's economy has shifted over the years from the primary sector to secondary and tertiary industries. The primary sector includes any industry involved in the extraction and production of raw materials, such as farming, lodging, fishing, forestry and mining. Indonesia is the third largest country by agricultural output, meaning its role in the primary sector is still massive to Indonesia but also the entire world. And it is the largest producer of palm oil, for example. However, agriculture contributes about 14% of its GDP, while it employs 41% of its entire workforce. The whole sector is plagued by low wages, and any developed economy moved its workforce mainly away from the primary sector, as it is insanely labor intensive and harder to scale than any other industries. The secondary sector, also known as the industrial sector, describes the role of manufacturing, construction and processing. It encompasses industries that produce a finished, usable product, or are involved in construction. The secondary or industrial sector makes up about 38% of their GDP, with manufacturing itself playing a key role in the country's economic development, and now contributes alone 20% of their GDP. It now also plays a significantly bigger role as the agricultural sector while employing way less people. The economic output per person is therefore way larger in the secondary sector than in the primary sector. Manufacturing is at the heart of the country's government's plan to grow to one of the largest economies. The main areas of production include textiles and garments, food and beverages, electronics, automotive and chemicals, with the majority of manufacturers in this sector consisting of micro, small or medium-sized enterprises. However, despite being a manufacturing powerhouse, the country has remained a major importer of manufactured goods, high technology and skills since the early 1970s. The tertiary sector, also known as the services sector, is the third tier in the free sector economy. The tertiary sector is made up of retailers, entertainment, financial companies, consulting and other offering services. Rich countries often have a significant portion of their GDP stemming from the tertiary sector. In general, the more advanced a country becomes, the larger a role its services sector plays. Switzerland, for example, generates about 74% of its GDP from the services sector, 25% from their industrial sector and just 1% from their agricultural sector. Now, Indonesia's largest sector is also the services sector, making up a total of 44% of their total GDP. It is also the largest employer, accounting for about 45% of the workforce. In 1990, the services sector made up only about 1/3 of all jobs. This makes the tertiary sector the largest potential of growth for Indonesia. Between 2010 and 2017, this sector grew the fastest, at an average rate of 7.1% per year. However, the economic output of Indonesia's services sector is still surprisingly small, and Indonesia's GDP per capita is only at rank 99 worldwide, with about $12,300. How could that be? Well, one possible explanation might offer the ministry's director, which said that the absorption of service workers is moving more towards informal sectors and menial jobs in trade and construction, while there are fewer workers in the more modern, high-skilled services sectors. This basically offers a perfect explanation as to why the economic output in such a lucrative sector is still lacking. A further reason is Indonesia's lack of participation in the global value chain, which requires human resources to bring more added value to physical goods. And human resources is definitely the resource Indonesia has enough of. As of today, Indonesia has the 4th largest population of any country with 280 million people. That number is estimated to grow to roughly 310 million people by 2045. Their median age is also only just below 30, meaning they got a massive working age population contributing to that growth. Across all sectors, Indonesia's GDP has grown at about 4.8% per year from 2000 till 2022, which is fairly high, however not as high as some other high-growth nations. It has reached above 7% in 2004, and its government is doing everything to achieve that growth of 7.16% again. Well, now everything is growing and everyone is happy, right? Well, not really. There's some clear problems in the futures and also some potential disasters coming for Indonesia. For example, Jakarta, its main capital, has been listed as the world's most vulnerable city to climate change. Their government even decided to move the entire capital to another island to try and mitigate some of the damage. Now, of course, it is not the only reason the government decided to move the capital, but it is surely among some of the most important points discussed. Indonesia is not exactly guilt-free from their climate change either. It is one of the world's largest producers and exporters of coal. After palm oil, it is the country's largest single exported product and therefore a major contributor to its economy. Despite all the negative press, demand has not slowed down, as China's appetite for coal has become larger over the past years, despite its effort for green energy. China makes up about 54% of the world's coal consumption, yet still the world and also China have made great efforts in order to reduce their coal consumption. And if that work bears fruit one day in the future, that might hurt Indonesia's economy seriously. Indonesia itself might be not such a large consumer of coal as some other major nations. However, pollution is still an issue. It is today the world's 20th most polluted country. A developing country can often either choose fast economic growth with much pollution or slower economic growth with less pollution. Most countries, understandably, are opting for fast growth for various reasons, and one can hardly blame them, as no leader wants an impoverished nation for longer than what is needed. An explosion of population is also often a reason for such pollution, as infrastructures can't keep up with the growth. As Indonesia's middle class expanded rapidly, the population growth has decreased substantially. This effect is common for any developing nation, which is becoming increasingly developed with a more educated population. A sinking growth rate for the population might reduce the pressure on the infrastructure and give some room for less pollution. However, a sinking growth rate also means less and less working people producing goods and paying taxes. This issue might be more of a future concern, as their median age is still incredibly low at below 30 years old. Despite its expanding middle class, inequality still remains a large issue to the state, and over 10% of the population live below the national poverty line. Another issue and major concern is Indonesia's corruption. It ranked 96th out of 180 countries on the Corruption Perception Index in 2021, which is an improvement from 102nd place the previous year. The lowest ranked countries are perceived to have the most honest public sector. This means Indonesia is improving in terms of corruption. Corruption cases in Indonesia could, for example, be companies obtaining licenses and permits, which can be more based on personal relationships rather than non-biased criteria. Companies obtaining government contracts can also be plagued by corruption. Despite the country's improvement, it is still a major issue and costing the country hundreds of millions of dollars directly and even more indirectly. If a government official, for example, selected a company for a government contract based on personal connection, instead of just selecting the best company suited for the job, this could cost the entire country a ton of money for years to come. This results in a net loss for the country and its population. Well, a net loss for everyone besides those involved in the corruption case. Last but not least of its problems is the inflation rate of Indonesia. Before 2008, the country had repeatedly years with above 10% annual inflation. The past few years, that rate has been reduced significantly, luckily, and is projected to hit in 2022 around 5 to 6%, which is still above the optimal rate of around 3%. Despite Indonesia's ongoing struggles, I'm confident that Indonesia will be a very successful country in the future, and I'm wishing them the best. If you found this video interesting, I'm sure you will enjoy these videos as well and subscribe for more.